Welcome to Rosco Live on Clubhouse. We are hosting this event within the Entertainment Design Club, a space created for anyone interested in live entertainment lighting and scenic design. We encourage you not only to join the club, but to also welcome you to host social or educational conversations here and connect with others in the entertainment design community. Today, we are welcoming our fifth guest in this series, lighting designer Asia Jackson, whose resume proves her to be a very busy person, and we are thrilled she's giving us an hour of her time today. We will be opening up the stage a little later and inviting anyone up to ask questions. But now I would like to introduce our host, Chad Tiller, VP of Live Entertainment at Rosco. Turning it over to you, Chad, to introduce our guest and get the conversation started.
Thank you, Nikki. Thanks for introducing the room, and thanks for getting us going here. I'm thrilled to have Asia Jackson joining us today. Asia is a lighting designer based in Boston. She works in theater, opera, dance, and interdisciplinary immersive performances. As an alum from the Johnny Carson School of Theater and Film at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, she graduated with a BFA in theatrical design, later receiving her MFA in lighting design from Boston University. Asia has designed for companies such as the American Repertory Theater, the Public Theater's Under the Radar Festival, Boston Center for the Arts, and the Boston Conservatory. She's also worked as a lighting assistant for Jaeger Designs on events such as MiniCon 2018, the Microsoft Inspire Ready 2019, and Microsoft Ignite 2019. Asia is the resident lighting designer and core collaborator for interdisciplinary site-specific movement company Hold Tight. She has also worked in production management with companies such as the Santa Fe Opera, Boston Lyric Opera, and the Denver Center for the Performing Arts. Asia is currently on the faculty for the National Theater Institute teaching lighting design and serves on the board of directors for Brighter Boston, an internship program that pays and trains new technicians in live event production. So with no further ado, Asia, thank you so much for joining us. How are you today?
Hey, thank you so much for that glowing introduction. I need to have you introduce me all the time. I'm so excited to be here. So thank you so much. And hello, Joel, Scott, Nikki.
Excellent. Yeah, I want to latch on to one thing that was right here at the end of your bio. You're on the board of directors for Brighter Boston, and this is an internship program that pays and trains new technicians in live event production. I want you to tell me a little bit more about this fascinating organization.
Oh, I would love to. And recently as June 1st, I was named the board chair for Brighter Boston. So I'm really
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's my first board position, my first board chair position, and I couldn't be with a company that I believed in more. So this company started a few years ago by Dan Jensen, and he teaches at Boston Arts Academy. He also works at High Output. He's an independent lighting designer in his own right. And he founded Brighter Boston as a means of getting high school students training and on-the-job experience. Because we know when we're working in this industry, especially in lighting, so much of our education is tied to either you're paying a fee or you're working for free. So this model is totally different in that these high school students are paid hourly to learn lighting production and live event production, and then are placed in theaters around town, on gigs throughout the calendar, usually around 120 hours a year, where they are working alongside professionals in live events.
That's fantastic. And when you say live events, are we talking about predominantly theatrical events, or are there other events that we're talking about as well?
Oh, everything. So we have definitely opera, some theater, Christmas shows, one of the Sojourn shows that happens in downtown, to shows that happen in rock climbing gyms. And, we'll maybe have some interns go to this school to run follow spots for their production of Oklahoma. There was an event down at the Cambridge City Hall. We bring our interns there, set up the lighting, and run the lighting for that block party event. So it really is the full spectrum of event production.
That's fantastic. And how did you become aware of and first become part of this organization?
I looked for them. Through how I got into this industry, I owe a lot of debt to a training program that gave me the training. It was a 2-year training. I'm sure we'll talk about it soon, but I was really, really, really wanted to give back to my own community, or people who just had the same experience of theater, in that, I saw my first opera when I was a senior in high school. And I remember it was after my senior prom. The day after that, we all got up and went to the matinee of La Boheme. And it was incredible, So I was introduced to this whole side of production work, of backstage work, when I was in high school. And it's through that purposeful introduction and training that I have the career and the jobs that I have right now. So when I was in graduate school, I needed to do my internship, and a lot of graduate assistants go and assist another designer that they admire. Maybe they'll go for a semester and work at an opera company. And I really wanted to make my internship something that let me give back. And I sent out emails. I was speaking to one of my mentors, Mark Stanley, about where can I find this? Have you heard of any programs that are doing outreach work or training work? And I was told about Brighter Boston, who was still in their first few years then. And I sent a cold email to Dan asking to work for him and telling him that I really wanted to work for this company, because if it weren't for companies like this, I wouldn't be in this industry either.
Yeah, I'm so inspired by this, and you've touched on one of my very favorite topics, which is mentorship. And I think that there's such a value in mentorship. Can you, if it's not, I don't want you to rehash everything you've just told us, but can you dive in a little bit to mentorship? What does mentorship mean to you, and who helped get you into where you are now?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked this question. Mentorship to me means my career. Without mentorship, I would not have the focus, or just know where to look, have the acquired skills, and feel comfortable doing this industry. Because, everyone in this room knows, we do some hard work. It's really, really thoughtful, tedious work. And it does require a little bit of direction, a little bumpering, if you will. And so mentorship to me means what it is we're doing. It provides the avenue to. And my mentor, my very first mentor, I've had 3 very, very prominent mentors in my life. And the first mentor I had was John Jabalisco, who was the production electrician and resident sound designer at the Omaha Community Playhouse. And that is where I did my very first apprenticeship, which was a 1,500-hour supervised technical apprenticeship. And at the end of those 2 years, you get a Department of Labor certification as a stage technician. And John Jabalisco approaches his work with such thought and care and such diligence. And keep in mind, you still need to do it right in that, these systems that we set up need to turn on, and the lights need to turn on, and the sound system needs to play with no error. And he really crafted my first sort of avenue into technical theater, because before I met John, I had done no technical theater at all. So John was my first, and then my next mentor, who is probably my closest mentor and now friend. It's so hard to pull mentor and friend apart at this point, is Laurel Shoemaker. And Laurel was my mentor in my undergrad at University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And she is one of the most thoughtful people and will teach you how to go about this industry in the most honest way, but also in a way that is sustainable, and one of the things I think we're going to talk about is she really showed me what it does to look like and be a kind person in the room. So it was my first year working with her, and we were doing a focus and her knee was hurting. We've all had these odd things happen with our bodies, and her knee was really hurting. We were working with a relatively new electrician, so the focusing bit was taking a really, really, really long time for every light, and there were so many ramps and stairs on this set, and she was needing to walk all over the set, and I was like, oh my gosh, what can I do to help? I can't focus the lights. That needs to be the crew. I can't be the lighting designer because that is Laurel. So I ran backstage. I got a chair and I brought it downstage center. And I said, hey, Laurel, do you want to sit down? I have this chair and I can just go stand wherever it is you want me to stand. And that meant so much to her and furthered our working relationship so much that it really solidified that, this small act of kindness actually really does facilitate a more productive work.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to say, yeah, I'm agreeing with you, and I didn't want to just flash my microphone for that agreement. I'm holding on to a couple of things you said, but I don't want to interrupt the flow. So tell me your third mentor, and then we'll circle back.
Definitely. So my third mentor is Mark Stanley, and he was the head of the lighting design program and still is at Boston University, where I got my graduate degree. And I owe Mark so much. We would sit down and he would say, what do you want to learn? And I would say, I want to learn box booms. Tell me about these box booms. They seem to really trip people up. What are different ways we can work with them? So we spent a whole week and then he would assign another project just based on that one single lighting position. And then we would do, okay, now let's deep dive into Sykes. And then he would, he created class time for us to deep dive into that. And I am sure I gave him a bit of a challenge because, as Nikki mentioned, I do like to keep a full schedule, and graduate school prefers that you follow their schedule. So I really am grateful that he let me continue working while I was in grad school, because it really was the difference in me leaving graduate school successfully or me leaving graduate school with a little bit more to climb.
Yeah, I love the shout out for Mark Stanley. I love the shout out for all three of these mentors. I think that there's something about our industry. There's something about the continuum and generational passing down of knowledge and experience. And, everyone has one hand reaching up for help, but everybody also has one hand reaching back to help the next generation up. And I think there's such a powerful thing. I love giving the space on these conversations for people to give shout outs to those mentors and people who lifted you up. And that's great. I'm going to circle back to what you said when you were talking about Laurel, and you were talking about kindness, but specifically the word you used was sustainability. But not in the way we talk about with greenness or with eco-friendliness or that level of sustainability. But you were talking about in sustainable practices in the theater. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you're thinking of when you talk about sustainable practice?
Yeah, I'm talking about us being able to go into the theater, into the production studio, into the shop every single day with enough energy and support to do the jobs that we're doing. And like I said, touched on before, we do really hard jobs. These are long hours. Electricians are hauling malt and lifting dimmer racks into small above the stage closets and, scenery is building 2-story mansions on stage. These are hard jobs. And when you can go in and work alongside a team that gives you what you need in order to move forward, that will give you sustainability. And, kindness, it's not this abstract, fluffy, buttery thing. Kindness, I looked it up right before we got on this chat, and kindness is just friendly, generous, considerate behavior. And taking that into the workplace will make the workplace more enjoyable. And I know a lot of us here, you ask theater makers, specifically theater makers, just for the point, if you ask them why they do what they do, is because they are storytellers and they want to tell these stories. Well, in order to be a storyteller, you need to be generous and you need to be considerate about who is in the room with you and who's going to receive this message. And you have to be friendly enough to make sure that your whole team doesn't leave you. Being kind is going to get us to be making better work.
I echo this and applaud it. I remember when I first started at Rosco, now going back 14 years ago, I remember that whether I was calling on a film set and talking to a very successful gaffer or going onto a professional theater here in town and meeting a production electrician, I remember thinking to myself, these are some of the nicest people I've ever met. And I remember commenting to a colleague, oh gosh, all these production electricians are so nice. And my colleague said, well, they wouldn't be in that role if they weren't. And I think that there's really something to be said about, kindness is not only about bringing humane sustainability to the practice, but it's also about, these are the people you want to work with. And these are the people who are going to advance in their career if they're nice people, right?
That's right. That's right.
So, I think, are there ways that you have, I mean, this sounds like such an odd question as I'm framing it in my mind, but are there practices that you have embraced or things that you have chosen to do to bring kindness into the workspace?
Every day in little ways. I think the first step to being able to bring kindness into the workplace is to listen to who's around you. Just listen to what everyone is saying. Because part of being kind is being considerate, right? You need to know what you need to consider. So listen to who's around you. Ask questions. If you don't know the answer, ask again. You don't want to make assumptions for other people or step on other people's toes. And you would rather be the person in the room that's asking 10, 15 questions versus the one person who made the assumption and now the set is 2 feet down stage because no one talked about it.
Yeah, I think that's powerful. And I'm trying to remember because I know you asked a question very similar to this when Jay Duckworth was our guest a couple of weeks ago. And I think he was somewhere in the same space of like, listen to people, give people the human credit of being another person in the space. I think this is fascinating. I think that there are so many examples in so many parts of the industry where you can say, this is challenging or this is fun because of who the people are. There's an apocryphal story within Rosco of Rosco's owner, Stan Miller, bought the company in 1958. So Mr. Miller has been with the company for, however many years that is in math, that's quick in my head, 63 years. And Mr. Miller was on a sales call with one of our directors of sales at the time. And they had a meeting with a client and everything was wrapping up. Everything was feeling good. The clients had to step away from the table, and Mr. Miller leaned over to the director of sales and said, "Isn't it nice doing business with people you genuinely like?" And I think there's something so powerful in that. And it's like, at the end of the day, this is going to be more fun if we're all nice to each other.
Yeah.
Why is that so revolutionary? I mean, do we work in an unkind industry?
You know, I don't think that we work in an unkind industry. I think we have unkind practices that are pretty ubiquitous in our industry. But yeah, last week, whenever we talked to Jay, he said, I wrote it down because I loved it so much. He said, it is okay for people to fail. Honor the people. Honor the other people. Be you and accept the good. You know, it requires a lot of the person to give that generosity. But when you give it, people will repay that tenfold. You find someone you like working with, and then you're down in the dumps and like you need an assistant for a show, and you're gonna have to hang lights, and you know it's not an ideal contract, but you know there's one person you can bring them in because you have faith in them, you know they're going to be kind to the crew, and then you're able to do some pretty remarkable work under really difficult circumstances. But you were able to do that because the bedrock of what you're working on and how you're proceeding with your people and with the shows is with kindness. You know, it is sustainable. That being kind is just as much of a skill as being able to write eloquent emails, as being able to Photoshop a document quickly, to be able to sit down and repeatedly be considerate and repeatedly be generous. You know, those are skills you want on your team.
Well, and like any good skill, there are skills that need to be developed, honed. There's skills that need to be exercised so that you can make them second nature. I think that's brilliant, Asia, and I appreciate you diving into this so much with us. There's another topic I want to get into, and I know this is near and dear to your heart, and it's akin to this kindness and mentorship concept, and it's the concept of wage transparency. And there's a lot of conversation in our industry. I think this year off has given people space to think about some of these bigger topics. And I say year off, none of us were really still, but there were certainly more time to think about some of this stuff. And two topics have come to the sort of the fore here. One is the concept of the unpaid internship, and the other is the concept of working for a wage or a rate that may be below your level because, quote unquote, you'll get exposure, or quote unquote, we can't pay you this, but we're going to give you a subway card and a stipend, right? Like, I mean, talk to me a little bit about...
And pizza
talk
party.
to me a little bit about wages. Say again?
And pizza parties. That's another
pizza
one.
Pizza party. That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. So tell me a little bit about the industry and about compensation.
Mm-hmm. I've been in a few rooms this last year where we will have the conversation of we need to increase wage transparency. We need to increase wage transparency. We are going to do this by putting the wages of the jobs on the job descriptions. And I think that is a huge step up. So I want to give credit where credit is due, because that really is really informative for people to know whether or not a job is going to be suitable for them. So I'm really glad about that. What's also interesting is that in these same rooms, no one that's currently in the room needs to be transparent about how much they're making. And I think that is really odd, that it is, it just reeks of like a grandfather clause where the people who were here before, where we didn't talk about it, everyone stays the same. It's just everyone in the future will know how everyone is paid. And it sets up a huge imbalance between those who have been in the industry, those who have the experience and are here, and all of those people that we're bringing in. And we know that our industry is quite like a hand reaching down and pulling up like a tradition of apprenticeship, and to offset that and really keep that in balance when it comes to pay is not helping this next generation. It's not helpful that we don't know the rates of all of these different houses or designers, because then people don't know what's appropriate to ask for. Some general managers and executive directors, I've heard them say, well, they know they can negotiate, and we don't know we can negotiate. That's not true. It's not true when you say, like, hey, here are our rates, that it's just inherent that we will say, well, very good, I would like this much more, without, saying, well, that's half the production budget, or that's double the lighting budget. There's no context for us to enter negotiations. So just as we're educating our students and the future designers on new equipment, on how to go into production meetings, we also need to be talking about contracts and fees, and what acceptable fees are and what not acceptable fees are, what to include to give you some protections in your contracts. All of those are just as important, but they're not as shared as, hey, let me introduce you to how I set up my show file. That is so much more shareable as opposed to, hey, this is how I set up my contract.
Yeah, I think that, one of the things that I've been impressed with, we mentioned Mark Stanley a moment ago and his participation and mentorship through Boston University, but he's also recently started the Studio School of Design. And I know that I'm sorry, can you hear the thunder in the background? We're having a major rainstorm here in Brooklyn, so that was thunder rumbling behind me as I'm speaking. Mark just started with Clifton Taylor and others, the Studio School of Design, and I know that one of the things they're looking at is continuing education for professionals. It's not just access for pre-professionals. It's not just auxiliary education for the current students, but it's also for postgraduate or post-professional continuing education. And I'd be interested if there is something through them where they're going to be talking about contract negotiation and how this all lines up. Asia, are you a member of 829? Are you in the union?
I'm not in the union just yet, although I am on the track. And
gotcha.
Next year will be.
I'm curious, and if you don't feel comfortable articulating this, I'm curious what role the union gets to play in wage transparency. I don't know if there is a role, but I'm curious from that standpoint if there's some sort of playing field leveler through that.
They do help. They do. There is a lot of help in a way. And, Kathy Perkins, who is another incredible lighting designer, incredible mentor, she has been putting in some work really with the Black community and people of color design community specifically in helping us have a little bit more access and understanding of what the union does do and the role that they play. And they do help. They require House to list their minimum fees. You can also find out what everyone else on the contract is making, so that way you can say, well, I want to be equal to this or whatnot, to help you out with negotiations. So there is a little bit of help with the unions, but it's not as helpful in the non-union houses. Especially if you're working a non-union contract, then the aid that is there is a little bit less. Now, it could be improving. There could be variations on that. But that's from the conversations I've had, what I understand the union does for transparency. But I really think that it needs to be more on us, that it needs, we're signing the contracts, it is, I would love us to rid the taboo of talking about how much we make.
Right. And I think that there is certainly built-in taboo, and that can be tied to everything from white supremacy to capitalist structure to et cetera, not to get on my soapbox here, but it seems like there's a connection between these are the things of which we shall not speak, that is tied to power structures that are intrinsic throughout not only our industry but society. Is that overstepping, or are you aligned with that thinking?
I totally agree. And, it's not a very generous way of going about this industry. And, and
that makes it not a very sustainable practice.
Exactly.
There we go. We brought it full circle.
Boom.
Because I've kind of tiptoed up to it, I mean, let's talk about it. The buzzword is diversity. The buzzword is parity. But yet again, more data came out. I think 3 days ago, there was an infographic going wild through social media about the percentages of design roles given to people of color, and specifically 0 to indigenous individuals. And I'm curious, how can we as an industry, and now I'm going to put you on the soapbox to speak for the entire industry, but let's discuss access and how can each of us aid in opening up opportunity?
Yeah. There is
big topic.
It is big, and we all need to practice having these conversations. So why not practice with people in our own industry? So, if we mess up or make a mistake, then we just look forward to learning and getting better down the road. And I'm so glad Hannah is in here. Hi, Hannah. Because above the Boston University Theater, there's this Hamlet quote, and it's like, to hold as twere and the mirror up to nature. And, theater makers take that on and we're like, oh, we are the ones doing it. And, we are the ones that need to look into the mirror. We need to take those lessons ourselves, because these violent events are happening backstage. They're happening in the classroom. They're happening all over the place. We need to take as much responsibility for the lack of diversity in this industry as anything else. And it's a hard industry to break into. The training is expensive. The hours are really long and the rates are really low. So if you have someone who needs to decide between paying their rent and paying for groceries that month, they can't very well take on a training internship that costs $3,000 for a few months. There are so many great training programs, and I know one of them is going through major changes. But, some of these apprenticeships and internships were pipelines into New York City, where if you worked for free and you paid them money, you paid them for your room and board, remember, then you would suddenly have access to all of these contacts, and you would have their email addresses and their phone numbers, and you could just talk to them and ask them to go out for coffee, and then you can sit in on the Broadway show, and then suddenly you're assistant to the designer, and then suddenly you're the assistant. It is that path so many people have gone on. My friends have gone on that path, gone to the internship, moved to New York, started doing the assisting. Now they're doing associate work and doing their own LORT shows. It's not that it's not hard. Every single avenue into this industry is difficult. But when you miss the pipeline, you miss the training, you miss the networking, you miss the avenue in. And that's why our industry looks so similar.
Yeah, I think if there's a cookie cutter approach and there are barriers of disadvantage or barriers of lack of privilege that prevent people from following that path, then there's opportunities that aren't exposed, and therefore the only people who take advantage of the opportunities, who can take advantage of the opportunities, are the people who have those underlying privileges. And so I suppose, you're one lighting designer in all of the world. What is one thing that Asia can do, and maybe others who are listening can take from that? Again, to put you on the spot and make you speak for the entirety of the industry.
Oh, no problem. I'm such a ham. I would love to be on the spot all the time. Well, one thing I'm doing, giving back, right? I know that I have employment. I have enough income to support myself. I can pay my rent. I can pay for my car insurance. I am here with this career because of the people that have made sure to give back, have made sure to bring a new assistant on, have made sure to diversify their staff. People have made a lot of these decisions on purpose, and their purposeful decisions opened up more opportunity for myself and others who have a similar background to me, whether it's lived experience or racial background, and so we can hold ourselves accountable. So when I have a job that someone comes to me for and, I can't do it because it doesn't work in my schedule, who am I going to recommend for that job? That is a moment of accountability. And, I've been in some rooms with alumni rooms, working designer rooms, artist rooms at large. I'm really grateful that we have had that. That is a silver lining, that we've had these rooms to have these very awkward conversations in. But, they're really frustrating because I'm there with these other designers and I know their design teams. And I know who they ask first whenever they want to bring someone on, and who they ask second whenever they want to bring someone on. And each time they could make a decision of, you know what, I don't have someone in my pool that I feel would add to the diversity of this team. Let me reach out to someone to make sure I can. Reach out to me. We have a ton of Brighter Boston interns that are eager and ready to work. If you need someone, you have to pay them. We do not have any interns working ever without being paid. Take some responsibility, like hold the mirror up to yourself. Our industry, we're all in it right now. Think of who we have chosen to be our assistants and who we have chosen to share jobs with, to share upcoming positions with. Who do we choose to share the contract negotiations with? And each one of those decisions is a way for us to open up the industry. We cannot wait for equity or USA or the unions. We cannot wait for the big houses to make these decisions for us. It needs to start top down, bottom up if we want to see this change happen in our lifetime.
Here, and I think that one of the things that I'll echo here, and I know that I'm repeating what I have learned, I'm repeating what I've heard from others, but there is no shortage of a diverse workforce. That's no longer an excuse that white American theater or predominantly white institutions can hide behind, right? It's not about a shortage of qualified people. That doesn't exist anymore. It's about opportunity. It's about the virtuous cycle of recruitment to hiring to retention to training the next generation. And I think that there are so many opportunities, and I'm so impressed hearing you articulate how you're reaching out to the next generation, what opportunities you're able to create through Brighter Boston or otherwise. And so I hope that there are designers who are listening, either listening live or listening in the future to the recording, who can take this on and we collectively can carry this mantle. Asia, thanks so much for sharing all of that. I know we got deep there, but I think it was well worth it. So thank you. I'm going to give Nikki an opportunity to reset the room real fast.
Great. Thank you so much, Chad. I'd like to welcome anyone who's joined us since the top of the hour. We're having a really great, enlightening discussion today with lighting designer Asia Jackson. We'll soon open the room and invite anyone to come to the stage with questions you might have for our guest. Please note that we are recording this conversation, so by raising your hand, you acknowledge consent to be recorded. And with that, I will hand it back over to you, Chad.
Great, and as Nikki just said, feel free to come up to the stage. We'll call on you when you come on up. But in the interim, while we're waiting for folks to get comfortable with their question, Asia, I'm going to deviate off from the script here, and I'm going to ask you, when did you first become aware of Rosco, and what does Rosco mean to you?
Oh, how fun! Okay, so it must have been an undergrad sometime. I had a shelf in my room that had like all these books, but there was one empty shelf, and it was just packed with Rosco gel books. I remember they were like the best thing I could ever find. In every USITT, every convention you're going to, they're giving out all these gels and all these samples all the time. Oh my gosh, I just made myself a collection. And there was one I went to is one of the USITTs. And there were like, you all were handing out this like booklet of odd gels, discontinued. I'm not sure. I still have them in a very special folder because these particular gels are some of the most beautiful colors that I use. So I use them as like specials, or, if I'm setting up my own lighting, I'll use them a lot. So my first introduction was through the use of color. And then I think you and I met at either USITT 2013 or at Hemsley 2013.
I think it was the Hemsley. It was certainly one of the portfolio reviews. Yeah.
Yeah. So, wow, it's been a number of years. Yeah. Big fan of course. It just is part of how lighting, like how I know lighting, Rosco and ETC, right? It's just part of our lighting lexicon that we always use.
So when you think of Rosco, what is Rosco to you?
Oh, what a question, Chad. Rosco is an ability to control light. Yeah.
That's going on my business card, by the way.
It is sort of like your first. It was my first way to alter and control light in a way that I thought.
I love this, and when I first started at Rosco, my mom wanted to tell some of her friends back home what does your son do? What is this that Chad is doing? And so she needed me to give her a nice, tidy sentence that she could repeat to her friends. And I said, well, lighting designers can control light with color, movement, and texture. And Rosco makes products that change the color, the movement, or the texture of the light, and that's what we do. And that was the simplest way I could distill it. So I love that this connection to control is your concept. What are the other products out there that you've got your swatch book? What are the other things you can't live without?
Oh, wow. Well, you do enough theater in basements, and you learn to live without a lot of things.
So clip lights is what I'm hearing. This is going to be the next thing.
You cannot live without clip lights. I'm telling you, you're doing a musical over at ART. It does not matter. You still need 1,500 clip lights backstage. Let's see. I could not do without. Well, there are some simple things. I'm a pretty avid notes writer. It like tactile notes with a pen and a paper. I need my planner. I have this planner I take everywhere. I've been using the Passion Planner for 6 years. I take it absolutely everywhere, and I will take down so many notes. So that's one thing. I could not go and do my lighting without notes. I really want to make sure that we are capturing the details. These like brilliant ideas that we spoke about in our first meeting, how do we hold on to that all the way to once we're coming into tech and we're like, hey, remember when we said it'd be cool if the lights did, this kind of thing? And to say, yeah, we were going to try that here and then to try it there. It's just to be able to create those links. So I would not be able to do it without taking my own notes.
Do you rely on an associate for any note taking, or is that a very personal thing for you?
It's pretty personal for me. There may be an occasion, maybe I might have had Hannah take notes at some time, but usually notes, no, please, I will take my own notes. I really need, if I do have an associate and assistant, I really need them to be listening to any of these extraneous details. Is a crew coming in an hour early tomorrow? Is there a light clipping one of the speakers? Is there, I need them to be really aware of the tactile things that are happening in the space. So that way there's space in my mind to think about the kind of way we are going to light this piece.
Yeah, so I wasn't going to go down this path, but now that you've admitted that Hannah assisted you, I'm going to ask you, maybe it's awkward because she's here, but what is your definition of the assistant that you need, the associate who's going to best support you? What are those qualities in a great associate?
Number one, we touched on this very, very beginning, is listening. I need an associate and an assistant who listen to what's going on, because one individual person can't catch absolutely everything. So really making sure that our lighting team is arriving the most prepared, the most well-informed, and prepared to alter any of the things we need to. With lights, we are the last in, first out. There is almost an expectation of being ready. So I need my assistant to be ready for anything, because, sometimes it's going to be fixing something in the drafting. Sometimes it's going to be getting a chair from backstage so somebody can sit down. It really can span a lot of it, but having someone who listens and someone who is aware of their surroundings, those are things that are so difficult to teach. At Hemsley, when I was there, I'll never for my whole life forget Ken Billington. And we sat down and he was looking at my portfolio. He's very kind. And I was taking notes, as I do, And he's like, wow, you have great penmanship and you're very well dressed and we can teach you the rest. And I was a little shocked. I was like, oh gosh, okay. But there are a lot of these really specific things like within our draftings, learning the paperwork, learning the consoles. Those are all teachable things. And there are other things that are more difficult to teach on our production timelines. We do want to teach them overall, right? We want to be modeling good behavior on every production we're on. Sometimes it's hard to teach somebody how to listen when you only have 20 weeks together.
Right. Wow. Well, this is I think this is the 5th Rosco Live interview we've done. And I think we've managed to mention the Hemsley lighting programs in, if not all of them, at least 4 out of 5. So yet another shout out to the Hemsley program and the internship.
Gil would be so proud. From what I know of him, he was Mark Stanley's mentor, and Mark Stanley is my mentor. He also was really important for him to give back and to educate the next generation of lighting candidates. And even though I was not the Hemsley finalist, I was able to gain so much. I met you there. I met other designers there that I still talk to. I have furthered my relationship with Steve Shelley, who I speak to frequently. He's wonderful, always entertaining. It gives you a way into the lighting industry. And I'm really, really grateful for the Hemsley and to be a finalist there, and then also to go back and help Mark set it up again for the next year of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I shout out to Mark and the Hemsley crew for all that they do and all that they do every year for everybody in the industry. I think it's a real testament to Gil's legacy. So I'm glad to say that. Well, I'm going to give our audience one last chance to throw their hand up in the air. There's a button down at the bottom. Raise your hand if you want to come up and ask Asia anything before we wrap up. Going once, going twice. Okay, well, I appreciate everybody being here and for listening. Asia, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you and your generosity of spirit for coming on here and being vulnerable and sharing your thoughts with us. This is, I've personally gotten a lot out of today's conversation, so thank you so much.
Thank you, too. I'm so glad to talk to you, and I hope we get to talk again.
Absolutely, sooner than later. Nikki, I'm handing it back to you to close us out.
Thanks, Chad. Thank you so much, Asia. It was a wonderful conversation with, I think, some subjects that can expand outside of the theater community for sure. Thank you, everybody who did join us today. I want to remind everyone, if you don't know, that we do have a Rosco.com/live where you can find this conversation very soon. We'll be posting this conversation as well as any of our previous conversations, and we will also list future conversations there. You can also follow the Entertainment Design Club, which is hosting this particular chat right now, and to hear for the any of the future. Sorry, I'm all flustered right now. I don't know why. Any of our future conversations. So join the Entertainment Design Club if you're not already. Our next conversation, we do already have that scheduled, is we're mixing it up again with the times. But this time is going to be at noon Eastern. It's Wednesday, June 23rd at noon Eastern time. And we're doing a little earlier because we are going to be talking to lighting designer Charlie Morgan-Jones, who's joining us from across the pond over in England. So it's a good time for him to join us. And I think that's going to be a really fun conversation as well. And we really enjoy you coming today. Again, you can also email us at live@rosco.com if you have any feedback or ask any questions after any of these conversations. And I want to thank everyone again for coming, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, everybody. Hey, Jennifer, I'm glad you joined us. Sorry we're wrapping up right as you got here.
Catch it on the YouTube.
All right, everybody. Have a great week. We'll talk soon. Thanks, Asia.
Thank you.